Hi everyone, welcome to week 4 of your Advanced Computers 2 course. This week we are going to finish up chapter 2, which was all about formulas and functions. So this week we're going to be looking at things like the if function, lookup functions, the payment function, how to create and maintain range names, and how to use range names in formulas. So let's skip on down to the slide where we start with looking at if functions. So what an if function is basically a logic test where we're testing to see if something is correct. So it's either true or false. So what we would look at is columns or whatever of information, and we might look at a particular column and say, well, if that particular column is equal to another column, then we want it to be true, or if the column's not equal to it, then we want it to be false. So that's kind of how if-then functions work. And there's more than one way to set that up. You can say if cell A3 equals cell A4, then it's true. If it doesn't, then it's going to be false. And you can have it come back and put a specific character in there, phrase, whatever you want. You can tell it what to put if that particular condition is true or false. And so that's what an if function does. So basically it's going to be built from different logical operators. So these are some of the things you can do. So you can choose for something to be equal to, or not equal to, less than, greater than, less than, or equal to, and greater than or equal to. So all of these different logical operators are things that you can use as you are building your if function. So you might say if cell A2 is not equal to cell A3, return the value yes, or whatever. You can truly just build whatever you want with these using these different logical operators. So this kind of gives you a little example of how that works. And here's where the if function is right here. And it says, if A2 is equal to 3, 4, or 5, and then it's going to tell you what do you want it to do. You want it to, if it's equal, you want it to come back and say what? If it's not equal, you want it to come back and say what, and that's what this is. This is what you want it to produce with whatever criteria you set up. So you can see how in some cases it came back with an actual value. In other cases it came back with words, and that was set up in the actual function. So that's the if function. Then you're going to be looking at different lookup functions. And so lookup functions can basically refer to a table and then, say, well, if it's in this table, then return this. If it is in here, return that. And so that's what a lookup table does. And then you have something called the VLOOKUP. I actually use VLOOKUP every single day. There's not a day that I don't use a VLOOKUP. And so VLOOKUP is something where it goes and it looks up a table looks into another table for a value and returns that result. So it might look at this particular spreadsheet and say, okay, I'm going to look for this. And since I work in pharmacy, it might be looking up a DEA number, for example. So it might look up a DEA number that's on my table and go to another table and look up for that same DEA. And then if it's there, it's going to return the value that's in maybe their sales column. Maybe it's going to tell me what their sales were for that particular month or whatever. And so I can set it up however I want, and it's going to return whatever function that I want. So this is just a quick example of using the VLOOKUP. It's going to basically just say, hey, I found it, here it is, give that back to me. And then they're going to talk about the payment function. This is where you can set up different financial functions like interest rate, the number of periods, what's the present value of the loan, and this is going to be able to, this is if you've got a fixed interest rate and different payment periods, you can figure out what your different payments are going to be using this particular payment function. And then the next thing they're going to talk about is range. And a range is just a group of cells, basically. So it's going to talk about how to create a range and how to create a range name. So as you go through the last part of this chapter, if there's anything at all you have questions about, please make sure that you're reaching out to me, and have a great week.